Sujewa, we're back. IndieSeen is back, and we're gonna talk about um, a movie and also kind of two movies because they're so intertwined in my head. They're both by the same writer director. They came out within a year of each other. They star pretty much the same cast and are pretty much about the same thing. So we are talking, of course, about In Front of Your Face from 2021, and then also the novelist film from 2022, both by Hong Sang-soo. And yeah, you recommended that we talk about these movies. The phrase that kept sticking out in my head was you kept saying critics love these movies or love this filmmaker.
Yeah,
And we're gonna get it. We're gonna get all into that. Plus, we're going to talk about what we're going to be discussing on Wednesday's live stream because you're going to be a guest then, and
hmm
then also what you're up to because you are Sujewa Ekanayaka, a filmmaker, and you're out. You know, you just said you were scouting locations for your latest film right before we got on the air here. So first of all, welcome back. How are you? And what's been going on in the world of 53 spaceships?
awesome. Glad to be on the show. Glad we're doing this episode on Hong Sang-soo and other indie stuff. Yeah, lots going on in the actual indie filmmaking world, and especially Sujewa movies world. 53 spaceships. I'm wrapping up the script. Hopefully, in a week, it'll be ready. I just texted Aaliyah to get her schedule for October, so we're going to start filming, rehearsing, and filming. Last night, I figured out how to do spaceships. Apparently, you can buy stock footage of lots and lots of spaceships now.
Oh,
It's amazing, like hundreds if you want, if you want to shell out the money. And
well, just real quick, are these spaceships that are against like green screen or something, so you can literally buy them and plop them into your After Effects or however you want to do it?
that, and also shots of spaceships landing in an alien planet, spaceships flying by Earth, anything that you may want a few seconds of. I mean, not not for a giant scene, but for what I'm doing, which is going to be detectives looking for these spaceships. At the start of each segment, I may show a long time ago some of these spaceships in this universe or another universe, little clips, just to add
Cool.
the spaceship energy to the movie. So for that purpose, it's great. Also, I can learn how to do them, do them a number of ways. One thing I figured out last night is you could do old Star Trek, old Star Wars type effects relatively easily now because the consumer technology is so great now.
Oh yeah.
So we're ready to go. I figured out how to get 1 million views for a YouTube video, so I'm going to use that for future movies when they get to YouTube. Theatrical, I have a good setup with the local theater, so we're going to do lots of theatrical screenings. I may do festivals if the movie gets done in time for a fest. I'm showing Amir Matla's movie, Young Ali, Those Were the Days, on October 9th. That's coming up. So that's what's going on over here. Just the usual, a ton of film stuff.
All right. Well, that's very cool to hear. And yeah, I mean your scope keeps I was going to say improving. That's the wrong word. Expanding with
Nice.
each feature. So
Improving movie.
yeah. Well, we started talking about years ago werewolves, and then cosmic disco detective, and now you're going into spaceships. So that's pretty. That's really exciting. Um, so yeah, I got to start off talking about In Front of Your Face by
Oh,
asking
the
you.
Renee poster back there from the movie theater.
Oh, that's right. Yes, Cosmic Disco Detective Renee. You said you've crossed 1 million views on YouTube. Is that right?
No, 400,000 plus, but I figured out how to get 1 million views. I mean,
Oh,
theoretically,
okay.
it might cost maybe 6,000 and plus a bunch of work, advertising plus, a blog post, etc., interviews. But I think it could
Okay.
be done. So I'm gonna see if I can do it.
Okay. Because yeah, I thought I'd missed something there, but okay, you've got a plan. That's good.
I got a plan.
And,
And
yeah,
400,000 plus views.
yeah, that's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Um, but okay, tell me about why we're discussing In Front of Your Face and to a certain extent the novelist film. What is it about, I guess, specifically critics liking this movie that you thought, hey, Ian is a friend and a critic. He's got a podcast. We should talk about this.
Well, aside from critical response to his movies, he does indie film at an interesting point, right? There's micro budget indie stuff that I and other lot of unknown filmmakers do. Then there's Coppola. He's doing indie film at a $140 million scale. Then Hong Sang-soo is sort of like old Jarmusch, Hal Hartley type level. He makes an indie movie, it goes to a major film festival or two, and it comes out theatrically in the US and Korea, South Korea, and other places. Then it goes to home video. So he kind of still has the kind of indie filmmaking career that existed in the 1990s, 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s. And for the most part, that type of filmmaker is gone now because you know distribution companies and producers are not making $5 million, $1 million indie movies anymore, right? Some ultra indie filmmakers do it. So in that sense, Hong Sang-soo is interesting. That's he practices a way of filmmaking and release that a lot of people are not doing now at sort of that mid level, right? And the other interesting thing about him is his movies are small, not much going on, kind of like mumblecore movies, but his movies are almost universally praised by film critics, like in the 80s to 100 for film critics on Rotten Tomatoes. So that I thought was interesting. Very few filmmakers have that kind of thing, and he makes movies fast. He puts out like two, three movies a year sometimes. So all combined. Plus, he's South Korean. We don't have too many indie auteurs from other countries that regularly play in the U.S. So with all that stuff, I thought he was an interesting filmmaker to discuss on an indie film podcast.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, for all the reasons that you listed, I definitely have to respect the accomplishment. I mean, I started off with the novelist film. I think because in my head I got it mixed up that that was the first one chronologically, but it was actually backwards. And watching it because it's filmed like 99% in black and white with a small color segment at the very end. Um, but yeah, I mean, I got this real and this is just my frame of reference, of course, because I'm a '90s kid. But I got this kind of Kevin Smith vibe.
Hmm.
People hanging out, very few locations, a lot of just sitting around talking about stuff, life stuff, and the camera very rarely moves. Now, there's some more movement in front of your face, but aside from that, I think the key difference is that I actually like Kevin Smith movies. I don't. I don't think I'm a fan of Hong Sang-soo.
Hmm.
Um,
Did you
you
like?
know,
Did you check out and like In Front of Your Face? I like that one better. I didn't like a novelist film all that much.
uh, you know, I I think I might have hmm. It's impossible to reach into the alternate universe where I watched the films in reverse order. I don't know how I would have felt about it. I think I brought the baggage from the novelist film into In Front of Your Face, which perhaps isn't fair
Hmm.
because I quickly realized that I was watching the same film just like at a slightly different angle. I mean, they're kind of about the same things. They share the main actress, and the main actor from In Front of Your Face also appears in the novelist film, although not in quite a big role.
Hmm.
And it is interesting because our lead, Lee Hye-yeong, I'm probably butchering that name.
Yeah, I
She
like her a
played,
lot.
yeah, she's good, but and it's nice to see her play two different types of leading women in each film. But I kind of had this. It's entirely subjective. The Catherine Keener problem, I'll call it. Back when she was, when I first started noticing her in like the late '90s and early 2000s, she was definitely playing this type in kind of like smaller movies. Just she was very good at playing very unlikable people. So much to the point where if I found out that she was going to be in a movie, I would avoid watching it. It wasn't until she started appearing in God, movies like the 40-year-old virgin, like mainstream stuff where she was playing like, in kind of comedic roles, not playing these kind of devious, sourpusses, that I could really stand to watch her. The testament to her performance, because I'm sure she's not like that in real life. But in the novelist film, the main character is so kind of dour and unpleasant and just nasty to most of the people that she's around, that it just I couldn't get on board. I didn't care what happened to her. I
Mhm.
didn't understand why the other people around her didn't just, call her out and then leave her stranded because she was kind of visiting other people in a strange place. So it's nice to see in front of your face the actress playing a completely different type of character. But by the time we get to the end of the film, I'm questioning her decisions and seeing some of the choices that she's made once a very big secret is revealed about what she's doing. I found that to be just as kind of low key monstrous as what the actress did with the different character in the other film, if that makes any sense.
Mhm. Makes sense.
So yeah, that's these are the only two Hong Sang-soo movies I've seen. And I've watched them both within the last 24 hours, so I haven't had a chance to immerse myself in his filmography. I did go do a light kind of internet research to confirm, yes, he's very popular with critics. I don't quite get it, but also seeing, I thought I was taking crazy pills at the end of the Novelist film, but it turns out I guess this is kind of a motif with him in terms of discussing people talking about art that they may or may not make, and if they do make it, we're not going to see or learn anything about the process of them making it. Now, for me, it's a big problem. I appreciate it as an exercise, but if you look at I guess, the log line of the Novelist film, I know we're here to talk about In Front of Your Face specifically, but this is just my entry point. It's about a novelist who goes and visits a friend she hasn't seen in a long time. They end up going together on this kind of a walk to this, I guess, a park or a forest preserve. She sees a director that she used to know, and then they also she runs into an actress, and she becomes obsessed with the idea of making a film with this actress. And the entire, like, it's an hour and a half movie. By the time we cross the hour mark, they're still talking about whether they're going to make this movie,
Mhm,
and then we cut to them having made the film already and doing a test screening of it.
mhm,
I'm like, the log line of this movie is novelist on her travels meets an actress and they plan to make a film. Now, that's true, but in my head, I'm like, okay, so they're going to plan to make a film and make the movie. It's going to be about that, but it's not. So advertising is true, but it's like in the log line is the fine print.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I would have liked to see them making that movie, right?
Yeah.
In the Nihilist film, because that would have been interesting to see how the main character works with making a film for the first time. I thought the movie was gonna be about that, right?
Yeah.
In an American indie, that would have been, the thing. Like, the second act would be that, third act would be possibly the film, screening and, us figuring out how it turned out and what the main character may have learned, if anything.
Right. And then in front of your face, we have a lady who, and this is, I was kind of confused by this, so maybe you can help walk me through this.
Sure.
Same actress, playing a lady who at one point had done some acting in the 1990s. Now, there was some reference to her having done a show. And I don't know if that meant show in terms of like an episode of television or show in the kind of colloquial sense of like it's a movie or a
Mm,
TV series. Sometimes a show is many shows or a
mhm.
film.
Probably a TV series in this case, I think.
Okay, but there was a mention that she was recognized after having been in one show.
Yeah.
And this is 30 years ago. So this being recognized on the street, that first of all, that rang some alarms. I'm like, I don't quite buy that, but let's just say it's true.
Well, she
She's
could have
not.
been famous from other shows, but this person who saw her, recognized her from one specific show.
I know that's the sort of the confusion to me because I didn't get the sense that she'd done a lot because she's not acting anymore, and she came from North America to South Korea to meet with this director for the possibility of maybe doing some acting again because she hadn't done anything. And like, the guy had said, yeah, I first discovered you 30 years ago and I
Mhm,
liked your stuff, but you haven't done anything since then, really.
mhm.
Um,
That
we're
that story, sorry for interrupting. That
no,
story
please.
is based on real life stuff that Hong Sang-soo said. This actress apparently is a well-known actress in Korea, and she. Now, I hope this is the right story, but what I recall is that that actress was well known. Then she got out of acting. Then Hong Sang-soo ran into her at a funeral or some family event. Maybe I think maybe she was a friend of the family. Anyway,
Hmm.
then uh, he asked her if she wanted to act again. She wanted to do it, so she ended up back in the movies, especially in Hong's movies. So that's I think based on real life.
Okay, and that would have been a great story to tell. Instead, we get the plot of In Front of Your Face, which I'll talk spoilers because there's
Sure.
not a whole lot going on in this movie. But so, very similar setup. This lady kind of drops back in on her hometown. She goes to kind of visits her sister back in South Korea, um, ends up kind of going to, meeting up at a bar with the
Mhm,
director, his personal assistant, but because there was a schedule change and she had a few more hours to kill, she ends up going back to the family home that she was born into, kind of walking around being wistful. I get the feeling she was hearing memories of her and her family kind of playing. It sounded almost because she was at the window, and I think the window was open. So initially I thought, oh, she was hearing a family in another apartment or something, but then I interpreted it as no, these are memories because
mhm.
we also get her praying and offering up these sort of serenity prayers to God. But she goes and meets with this director. They have this long, winding conversation, as is the want of Hong Sang-soo films, I assume. Um, and at the end of
Improvised,
it, what's that?
improvised.
Yeah, and here's the thing, there's an art to writing, dialogue, and I will talk about how this relates to your films because I definitely appreciate your movies on a level that I hadn't appreciated before until I saw these Hong Sang-soo films.
Nice.
Um,
That's what I should
well,
do. That's what I should do with critics. Send them my DVDs with Hong Sang-soo DVDs and say, check out the Hong Sang-soo's movies, get bored, and watch my movie and say it's amazing.
but there is something to the idea of, when you're writing Renee and Allison kind of hanging out, um, whether they are just having dates, getting to know each other, or whether they're trying to like solve cases. Uh, there is there's sort of a naturalism to it that also you can tell that it was written. It was written with a purpose in mind. With Hong Sang-soo and the movies that I've seen of him, it's almost like he gives them the premise and says, "Okay, go for it." But and this is going to be unkind to the actors. It's almost as if they don't quite know how to fill out 5, 10 minutes or whatever with this improvisational cue because there's a lot of awkward pauses. There's a lot of repeating dialogue. There's a lot of repeating themes. For example, in The Novelist's Wife, one of the plot points is our novelist meets this actress and she wants to make this film and the actress won't do it unless her husband agrees to it or something like that. And so it's like, okay, I'll ask my husband. Okay, because it'd be great. I really want to make the movie with him. Okay, I'll ask him because I don't really want to make the movie unless he can be involved. Okay, yeah, I'll talk to him tomorrow. I'll ask him. What'd be great is if your husband could do this. Yeah, I think it would be too, but I'm not really sure if he wants to do it. I'll ask him. I'm like, what is going on here? And that carries over to a good extent in Front of Your Face. At the end, uh, our actress, and I want to get her character's name, Sangok, is talking to Jaewon, played by Kwon Hae-yo. Again, apologies for these names. My
So,
pronunciation of them. The names are fine, but
we're not South Korean.
right. Um, she's talking to him, and he says, I haven't written anything yet, but if you give me 6 months, I'll write a script, and we'll make the movie. And she kind of starts laughing, and she's like, well, the thing is, I didn't tell you this yet, but I only have a couple of months left to live. And he's like, I'm sorry, what?" And she
Mhm.
said, "Yeah, so maybe we could do like a short film or something, but I don't have that kind of time. The doctors say that I'm very sick." She never says what disease it is, and she kind of talks in these vague terms. I almost didn't believe her, like she was trying to get out of working with this guy. But yeah,
During that
after
segment during that segment, I was thinking, "Why don't you guys do a Hong Sang-soo movie? You can shoot it in a week. Just improvise it."
there you go. But, my thought was after the film was over, because it's like 10 minutes after that revelation or 15 that the movie ends, I'm thinking they've got, uh, worldwide internet, let alone telephones. Why go from North America to South Korea to have a meeting with a director, about a film that you don't know anything about? A film that, because it's a film, probably has a shooting schedule longer than you're going to be alive. What is this all about? And that question is never answered or even asked.
Mhm, mhm, yeah. His process, Hong's process is, I think in, South Korea, the what we think is the first name is the last name. So when I say Hong, I mean Mr. Hong or, however it's it
So it
works.
would be Sang-soo would be the first name,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
Yeah.
So if you say Ekanayaka, that means my last name in a formal sense.
Mhm.
Same thing. Hong Sang-soo, I think Hong is the last name. Anyway, uh,
Okay.
how he works from what I read and from what he said is that he writes the dialogue overnight, gives it to the actors in the morning, so they have just a few hours at best to get ready for the roles. And just from watching his movies and having watched a lot of improvised American indie movies, it feels like half the stuff is being improvised, not even written, because trained actors can, within a couple hours, can do a pretty good job with written lines. And a lot of the like the in the novelist film example that you mentioned, that plot point being people going back and forth forever on it, and just the that film not having a structure that we would expect. All that um, says to me that that movie was largely improvised. Now the other one, uh, in front of your face, I felt, and I watched them on different days. I felt that one was a little bit more planned, a little bit more solid. Cinematography was better. I liked the colors. I thought more thought and planning had gone into that. And and agreeing with what you said, improvising a film is super difficult. Improvising a film, having and creating something that can hold the audience's interest, um, compared to a written film, that's very difficult. The written thing is almost always, unless they really messed up on the execution, the written dialogue is almost always going to be better because the writer director had time to plan out which information gets revealed when. So it's tough to do good improvised movies.
Right, and I wonder how much of that, how much Hong would have benefited from actually scripting out the entire thing, because, I mentioned the whole Zoom thing kind of tongue in cheek, but I really was a big question for me. What at the very end, when she wakes up the next day and she gets a phone message from the director saying, "Sorry, I can't make this short film with you after all," she starts laughing hysterically. And I don't how did you interpret that reaction? Because I didn't know how to feel about that. It felt like she was mocking him, or maybe she was making the whole thing up and she just wanted to get out of the situation of working with this guy, but then that opens up a whole bunch of other questions, why the trip in the first place? And I didn't get the feeling that she had told her sister that she was staying with about this terminal illness, or that she had any plans to, because she said she had very little time left and she was planning to die alone back in the States. So I go from seeing this kind of a light and interesting character in the beginning of the film to someone who is masking something very dark
Hmm.
and kind of cruel, especially to the people that she should be relying on most in her final days.
Hmm. So uh, I think the character actually has a terminal illness and she is dying. Now about the message, and she just doesn't want to reveal it to people for her own reasons, maybe to have people interact with her the way that she was normally, right?
Mm,
Not get special treatment, I guess, or something. Uh, Now, the end thing that you mentioned, I think she was laughing. I think what he was referring to was the having sex part. This is another spoiler. There was in that conversation between the actress and the director, who's a fan of the actress. She asks, kind of out of nowhere, "So you want to have sex with me?" or something like that, and he's like, "Yes." So then I guess both are on board with that. Then later on, the director, I think, who I believe is married and has a family and all that. Later on, the director calls and says, "Oh, the thing we discussed cannot be." Just using the phrase "it cannot be" as opposed to saying we can't shoot the movie. I think
mm.
he's referring to the sexual thing. So because of the sexual thing, he probably doesn't want to go into making the movie because the sexual thing might happen then, which creates a moral dilemma for him. So I think she laughed at that she gave him the opportunity to have sex with her, and then he turned it down.
Yeah,
That's
I can see that.
my take.
Well, no, I can see that interpretation, and I'm glad that you spelled it out for me because that is all implied in, like, maybe 2 to 3 lines of dialogue between 2 scenes that are separated by several minutes and other things going on in between.
Mhm.
So, again, it's like an exclamation point on the end of a sentence that, I feel like I hadn't fully read, or that wasn't, spelled out for me. So
Yeah,
that might be a failing on my part.
that conversation could have been like I mean, maybe it was, but it could have been a really well scripted half an hour, right, on a regular
Yeah.
interview, because so much is covered, right? The If they did that, and she ran into him, and then the possibility of making a movie was explored there, not a pre-planned thing that could have been done over Zoom, right? And then pros and cons, sexual attraction, blah blah blah. All that stuff could come out in a really well written, well performed half an hour, set piece, act, and then we could go into the aftermath. So a lot of Hong's movies, I mean, the ones that I've been watching lately, I've seen a bunch, maybe six or more. They seem like early draft notes for the script. He gets it down. He's like, okay, here's the idea. Go. Then he shoots it fast and gets it out.
Yeah, and, again, that is I don't know how to approach movies like this because I want to see them.
Hmm.
A, because they're recommended. B, because they are apparently popular with people in my profession. But watching them, I don't understand it. And I've read some criticism talking about themes and all this other stuff, and I still don't quite accept it or buy it. I'm like, yeah, that's again, these are great premises for a movie that could go and explore them, but this is not that film.
Hmm.
So I feel like there should be some kind of a disclaimer, like with the novelist film. If you had that log line, about novelist meets an actress, they decide to make a movie together, there should be a parenthetical reference that says, but they don't, and you're not going to see it.
Yeah. Uh,
So leave it up to me to decide whether I want to spend 90 minutes, or in this case of the weekend, 3 hours, because I'm watching both of these films back to back. I'm like, I honestly don't know if I would have bothered,
mhm.
you know, except for the fact that we are talking about it tonight.
I really, I mean, out of the many Hong Sang-soo movies I've seen, I liked The Day After. That felt scripted and tight. I liked,
Mm,
yeah, check out the Day After. I liked what you call it, In Front of Your Face. And comparing In Front of Your Face, like after watching Megalopolis, I'm glad a movie like In Front of Your Face exists because it's simple, tight, small, I mean, really well thought out by comparison to something like Megalopolis as far as the, how it appears, the execution, right? So
yeah.
me, it's like the opposite end. It's like, In front of your face is minimalism. Megalopolis is maximalism.
Very much so. But and we'll talk about Megalopolis on Wednesday, but I feel like that is a film that is also I can imagine reading that script and feeling like it's a very simple story.
Hmm.
It's a story with a lot of moving parts, but it definitely has points of view. I think where it gets cluttered is in the presentation of the visuals and the kind of the high camp and costuming and all that other stuff. But I feel like you can tell the story of Megalopolis in a tight 90 minutes. It just happens to go on for, 2 hours and 10 or 15, whatever.
Imagine
But yeah,
Hong Sang-soo doing Megalopolis.
if Hong Sang-soo did Megalopolis, it would be like 8 hours long. Oh my, not no, you're gonna give me nightmares. Are you kidding me? Um,
And Megalopolis, and we'll talk about it on Wednesday. Could be like, how people say, "Oh, this TV series or this streaming series could have been a movie." Megalopolis could be a streaming series. There's so much going on.
yeah, and I know a lot of movies, they say, "Yeah, this could be a series," but I feel like Megalopolis works very well as a movie. I don't need any
Yeah.
more detail about what's going on in this world than we get, although
Mhm.
I do feel like it is 6 hours worth of stuff packed into 2 hours, but with the exception of, like, the last 20 minutes, I feel like it moves. We're gonna talk about that in
Yeah,
a couple
yeah,
of
yeah.
days,
Wednesday.
but
The same for a mainstream audience. Megalopolis unpacked into three, 2-hour segments, a miniseries would work. Anyway, we'll talk about it on Wednesday.
yeah, or you end up with Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon,
Right, which
but
I tried to watch it. I kind of felt like it was unwatchable in this, just on Netflix on my little TV screen. I just couldn't get into it. But if I watched it at a movie theater, maybe I could have gotten into it.
did you watch the director's cut or the theatrical version?
Rebel Moon, I was watching whatever was on Netflix.
Well, 'cause they released 2 separate
Okay.
sets of movies over the course of, like, several months.
Mhm.
So I think that makes it I think the director's cuts are far superior, but I there's a whole episode where I fight with Armand White about that, which you can find on the channel.
I
But
I kind
anyway,
of feel like those movies, like Marvel movies, if I don't see it in a movie theater, I start zoning out because it's kind of CGI, same kind of things over and over. Doesn't hold my interest after a while.
yeah, I get it. But I wanna ask you what held your interest about In Front of Your Face in a way that it stands out from the other Hong Sang-soo movies you've watched, because you put this sort of at the top of that list with a movie called The Day After. I also want you to tell me what The Day After is about, because 'cause I'm
Mhm,
intrigued.
mhm.
But yeah, let's start with In Front of Your Face. Why did you respond to this one as sort of, a shining example of the other films you've watched of his?
Uh, the main character's acting, even though she was working with a probably quickly written script that she got, maybe a couple days earlier, felt like she had time to build her character, and
Mhm.
so that was a solid piece. The cinematography and the editing seemed more planned and done a little bit better than in the novelist film. I saw the novelist film prior to watching, I mean, a few days or a week or so prior to watching In Front of Your Face. The novelist film, it was just very difficult for me to get through. I had to stop and start over like 2, 3 days. And, it just didn't seem like it was well planned and tight, right? So and I like the color. I like the camera he used. Most likely for in front of your face, in front of your face, he used a Canon XA60, which is like a news gathering documentary type camera. I mean, it's not really something filmmakers use for you know fiction features. Like the camera I used for Cosmic Disco Detective Renee is a higher quality, tech wise camera than what he used for In Front of Your Face. But for that movie, uh, it works. The look works. Feels like we're hanging out with someone, on a day with their sister, with her sister. It, it touches on filmmaking. It touches on death and mortality. Um, and the character being a immigrant from Korea who spent some time in America and went back to Korea with some details about the life of Korean immigrants in America. That was interesting to me. So all that stuff I thought was more than what we usually get on a in a Hong Sang-soo movie. The All of that stuff was a little bit better than on a typical Hong Sang-soo movie, like in front of like the novelist film. Also, I saw Walk Up, and that was somewhere in between. I had to stop maybe a couple times to finish that, but I finished it within 2 days or so. And that's a little bit more planned. It's a little bit more confusing. Um, but if I had to rank four Hong Sang-soo movies, I would put In Front of Your Face on top, The Day After second, Walk Up third, Novelist Film fourth. So what all the things that he does, I thought he did better in 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 Front of Your Face. So I think we just have to approach Hong Sang-soo and maybe even Coppola, maybe Lucas, maybe every tour type director as like a band that does a certain kind of music, right? And Rolling Stones are not going to be, Tom Waits, right? These are, so you can't judge Rolling Stones by Tom Waits standards or vice versa. You could. I mean, you could do anything, but as a consumer, it's not going to make much sense, right? So, but if you compare three Tom Waits albums to each other, that would make more sense. So that's how I go into watching Hong Sang-soo movies. The film critics and the film festival world says he's important, and he has a fan base clearly, and his movies are a certain type of thing. So some of them I connect with, a lot of them I don't, and he reminds me a little bit of Joe Swanberg for much of his earlier movies before he started doing Netflix stuff.
That's a great comparison. I also love the music analogy, um, because Hong Sang-soo may be a bit of a challenge for me because I typically think of myself as someone who will watch anything. And I
Mhm.
love all different filmmakers, all different kinds of film. But with music, yeah, I'm not so much into country. Love, classic rock and roll, a little bit of hip hop, whatever. But country is kind of like, well, if something comes across, I might dig it, but I'm not going to go out and seek it out. With Hong Sang-soo, I feel like I've gotten a taste of him. So if someone like you maybe someday say, "Hey, we should talk about The Day After," I'm like, "Yeah, cool," but I'm not going to go seek him out as a filmmaker. There's almost like a red X warning sign now that I know kind of what to expect. I'm like, all right, if I've got 5 films to choose from and one of his movies is on that list, I'm probably only looking at 4 movies to choose from.
Right. The day after you asked what it was about, I think it's I recall I forget the exact plot. There's a plot in this one. Um, this guy hires this lady to work for him at a publishing house, and then I think they had an affair, so she left. Then he hires someone else who looks identical almost, and the wife thinks that it's the same girl as the earlier woman, right? So there's a big drama about it. I mean, a Hong Sang-soo level drama. There's some drama. So it's like a mistaken identity drama.
I mean, that sounds like a level of effort that I wouldn't have thought him capable of based on these 2 movies we're talking about. That sounds great.
And
Um,
another interesting thing about Hong Sang-soo for me is South Korea is mostly a Christian country, and that's unusual to me because most Asian countries are either Buddhist or atheist, mostly, right? So whenever I watch Hong Sang-soo movies and there are spiritual or religious references, oblique references, I immediately think, oh, they're talking about Buddhism. But no, in Hong Sang-soo's case, most likely they're talking about Christianity. So that's very interesting to me. Some of the Hong Sang-soo stuff could be read either as Buddhist or Christian, but it comes off more as Buddhist. Um, Go ahead.
Oh yeah, when Sangok is, there's 2 or 3 times during In Front of Your Face where we can hear her praying, and it's almost like a version of the Serenity Prayer, "Give me the strength to, XYZ." So yeah, I hadn't really made that connection,
And
about,
and
Christianity being a surprising film, religion to see in a film like this.
yeah, and in front of your face, the focus on the immediate existence, the immediate day-to-day existence, that's super Buddhist. That's one of the main ideas from Buddhism, that life is temporary, everything is temporary, you yourself are temporary. What you need to do is focus on, the present existence, not on the mythical idea of the self living in the past or the future. That it's a much more of an honest, wholesome, worthwhile type of living, to focus on the present. So,
Well,
and this
that's
cycle.
a philosophical disagreement that we'll not hash out here. But,
Right.
um, I would say, it's interesting because there is that I think that might have been something I was picking up on, that immediacy, which in the context of where a character ends up at the end, that's why I think I was zoning in or zeroing in on a level of selfishness that kind of bugged me. When she gives this news to the director, who had been a fan of hers for 3 decades, he breaks down crying, and she has no emotional reaction at all. She's almost like, "Oh, why are you crying? I'm gonna be okay. You seem awfully upset." I'm like, "Yeah, because my hero just told me that not only are we not making a movie together probably, but you're also dying." Um, and I know you had mentioned earlier that he didn't or she didn't probably tell her sister that she was dying
Mhm,
because she didn't want to like make it a thing. But when she inevitably dies and the word gets back to her sister, she's probably going to be thinking about that trip that she made from America to North Korea, like or South Korea, 2 months before she was dead and didn't say anything.
mhm,
So
mhm.
it's kinda like, which is worse? Wouldn't it have been better maybe to, because you get the impression they hadn't talked to each other in decades.
Right.
So it's like, if you're gonna go back and visit the old family house and talk to your sister that you haven't talked to in years and connect with old family, that's it kinda suggests that you have something that you want to give and perhaps some kind of amends you wanna make and, because you're in your final days, but that trip is all about her,
Mhm, mhm,
not thinking about what that's going to do to the people that she's left behind.
mhm.
Whereas if she just died, her family probably would have been broken up about it. But it's like, well, yeah, but we hadn't seen her in, 10, 20 years or whatever it had been. So it kind of makes sense. Other than, yeah, she came by and didn't say a word.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is that, um, she sees her life as a performance that she's not able to do on. I think she still has maybe unrealized ambitions. Maybe her career didn't go the way she wanted to. Maybe she tried to make it in the US as an actor, didn't work out, didn't make it in Korea to the point that she was happy with. So it kind of feels like she's still an artist. This is the closest she can get to being in a movie or performing. It kind of feels like she's removed from, even though she keeps saying, you know, keeps saying these things that sound like New Age or any kind of religion, focus on the present type of thing. She is obviously not dealing with an aspect of reality and the present, which is she's dying, and a dying person perhaps should behave in a different way, right? Like you were saying. So to me, maybe she hasn't, maybe she's her the days that we're seeing as a performance, even though maybe she herself hasn't really gotten in touch with the fact that she is actually dying. It's not a performance. Things will end. That maybe this is her way of coping with it. Maybe this is a sort of maybe it's a sort of like a shock response,
What'd be really cool though is to see that in a movie.
right? Or that even that discussion spelled out, like the actor guy could go, "Why are you not upset?" And then she goes, "Well, I'm focused on the present." And the actor guy could go, "Yeah, the present is you're dying, right? And you're not talking to people about it. You're not reacting to it." So,
Yeah, I mean, I almost wish you could do a mashup of this and the novelist film because at least in that movie they made they ended up making the short film. That would have been really interesting to see how that all shook out. And did she survive the experience of even making the movie? Could the doctors have been wrong and she dropped dead in the middle of doing something? I don't
mhm,
know. But now we're spinning out into hypothetical land and analyzing movies that don't exist, which I'm not. I do all the time, but I'm not a fan of. I'm not proud of it. Um, but yeah, I thank you for having recommended that we talk about it because I had no idea that Hong Sang-soo was a thing. I
mhm.
still don't quite understand why he's a thing. I think I'd have to go watch some other films to maybe understand that, maybe read some other criticism. But
Here's the question: do American critics like Hong Sang-soo because the stories take place in South Korea and it's a window into South Korean culture, as opposed to Joe Swanberg making similar movies and being hated for it because the culture is familiar to American critics in the Swanberg movies.
I honestly I thought about that
Hmm.
watching
Some
both
sort
of
of
these
an exotic
movies.
thing.
That's the exact I was struggling to find the word, but exotic is and I don't want to ascribe that,
Right.
as a negativity as a negative to any film critics because I don't know that it's true, but I feel like it very much could be true because I did wonder if I were watching, let's say, just a Kevin Smith movie, about these very subjects with actors who are delivering these exact same lines, would I have been equally as bored? And the answer is yes, because these are just not very well put together. I respect anybody who makes a film and puts it out, but I don't like having my time wasted, and I feel that's what this is. So when you told me that people love these movies, at the end of it, I'm like, yeah, there is probably something about it. It's like it's from a culture that they don't quite understand, maybe, but I don't even find that much uh, cultural uniqueness in what's going on in the films. What it comes down to is yeah, when they're ordering food to go, it's got an exotic sounding name, but you could have just as easily said, "Yeah, I need, 20 chicken wings to go," and that's about as deep as they get.
All right, I'm going to blow your mind, right?
Oh, shit.
Hong Sang-soo has a movie that's out of focus, and it's got like 95% to 100%, critics response. It's called In Water. You can look it up, and most of it is out of focus.
I,
So this is why we should discuss Hong Sang-soo. He can do no wrong with the critics. Can you imagine any other filmmaker putting out a out of focus movie? And Hong says it's on purpose, and that it's related to it's a movie about filmmaking, right? Obviously, so it's
Sujewa, this is why film critics honestly have a bad reputation, and I am occasionally embarrassed to be associated with the profession.
look up In
Um,
Water. In Water.
no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to. That
Just
just makes
read
me
about
mad.
read about the phenomena. It's out of focus, Ian. Can you believe it? It's wild. It's like a 70-minute out of focus movie.
You're not gonna believe this because it sounds like I'm saying this for dramatic effect, but I feel like I'm going to start crying right
Yeah,
now.
you
I
should.
like
You
I am angry at that. Damn it. But thanks for letting me know.
he's only he's only got one of those movies. I forgot about it till you were just talking about why Hong Sang-soo might be exciting to some critics. Yeah, it seems like could be because he's sort of an exotic act. Um, could be because the film festivals like him, but film festivals also liked Swanberg, but a lot
Hey,
of
I
critics.
like I like some Swanberg,
I like
he's
some
not
Swanberg. Yeah, I mean
right.
something like all the light in the sky is much better than the to me than the two Hong Sang Soo movies we talked about.
That out of focus thing. You've seen Idiocracy, right? The Mike Judge movie?
Yes.
Okay. There is that bit where Luke Wilson goes to the future or yeah, he's, everybody's stupid, and he goes to the movies.
Right.
And there's a film, it's just a naked bare butt up
Right,
on
yes,
screen, and the movie is called Ass,
right,
and the narrator says, "It was the number 1 film of all time, and it won 25 Academy Awards, including Best Screenplay."
right, right. That
Wow,
that
alright.
could be happening. So uh, I don't think Hong Sang-soo's at that level, at the level of The Emperor Has No Clothes, but I think, he does some interesting things, but at a very minimal level, and he does it fast. He has a fan base. Some critics like him. He's not a mainstream act. Um, I mean, you're not gonna if someone puts out his movie on 3,000 theaters, it'll be like the response Megalopolis got. Like, like a million, it'll make like $1 million if it's on wide release, but not like 30 million, right? Like a regular American movie. So, yeah, so I think he's just an unusual act that for some reason critics love.
I wanna close with this because when you recommended these to me and you said that the critics loved it, when I read the synopsis, because 'cause they're very similar, creative people meeting each other and kind of like going on walks and having conversations about, making art or doing something creative. I, for whatever reason in my head, thought this sounds kinda like a South Korean Richard Linklater
Right.
type of a thing, the
Uh,
before films, and I would love to see that, and I would love to see that.
right.
If it's not Hong Sang-soo, I wanna see one of his contemporaries. I wanna see the South Korean Richard Linklater
Right.
make their version of the Before trilogy and put it out. I want to watch those. Please, if you're watching this, get to it, or at least recommend these movies to me so I can
Yeah, I would watch
watch them
that.
and talk about it with you.
Right.
Yeah.
No, Richard Linklater movies are like way more developed than Hong Sang-soo movies.
But even they don't even have to be. I would take the filmmaking of either the novelist film or In Front of Your Face, not very many locations, very
Right.
set camera, except a little bit more movement in front of your face. Just if the screenplay was an actual screenplay and not a series of prompts.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So, yeah, all right, any final words on Hong Sang-soo, or at least for now?
As a film viewer, I'm somewhat impressed with his stuff. As a filmmaker, I like the fact that his career exists. It's an alternative. Um, yeah, I like some of his stuff, and In Front of Your Face, I like. If someone wants to check out a Hong Sang-soo movie, that's a good one I think to start off with. And yeah, he's probably going to have 3 new movies out by the time we're done with this podcast.
Very much so. They're gonna be about making a podcast, but the podcast won't actually materialize by the end of the film, any of them.
Right.
All right, Sujewa, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for recommending that we talk about these films. Wasn't my favorite experience watching them, but it was one of my favorite experiences talking through them with you.
Awesome.
It feels
And
very therapeutic.
and we know what to get you for Christmas. In Water DVD.
Only if it's actually in water.
Right.
Um, But we're gonna be back on, as we've teased before, you're gonna be part of probably a very intimate, i.e. small,
Sure.
panel on Wednesday, live stream, talking about Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, which, came out, is a spectacular people are saying it might be the biggest box office disaster of all time, just in
No,
terms
they
of, like,
always say that.
well, but I mean, look, you're talking $120 million of his own money and making $4 million at the opening weekend box office. It might be a contender at least.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
Plus another
we'll
20 million for the release that he had to put in.
right. Well, we'll talk about
Sure.
that and whether or not it warranted all the kind of derision and the mockery and the speculation that it's going to sweep the Razzies this year. But with the rest of Earth's mightiest critics, whoever is not going to be at the Joker screening happening that night. But anyway, Sujiwa, tell us where people can find you. About where's all your stuff? What are you up to?
At nycfantastic.com is the website that's getting updated. Sujewa Fantastic at Twitter. And yeah, those 2 places, or just Google Cosmic Disco Detective Renee. It's on YouTube, 400,000 plus views. Add to it, check it out. and two of my other movies are on there. The werewolf movie and slow romance, and yeah, and a bunch of new stuff coming out. And check out all the discussions I've done with Ian. I think we have about 50 on art house cinema at Ian's YouTube channel.
I don't know if it's that it might be that many,
Mhm,
but wow. Yeah, there's an indie scene playlist also with the slowdown and yeah,
mhm.
we've been talking a long time about movies and I love it. And you've been a great mentor and guide through the indie scene, indie film world movies. So thank you very much. And folks out there, be sure and check out Sujewa, support his films. All the information that he mentioned will be down below in the description. And yeah, we'll be back soonish talking about something or other. I have an idea of what that might be. It may involve returning guests. But yeah, until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much for watching Kicking the Seat. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you and take care.
Talk to you soon.